I'm assuming everybody consents. I don't know if the panelists got that consent thing. That's a new pop-up. All right. All right. I think we're live. All right. Let me share my screen again. All right, thank you everyone for joining us for December 2021. We made it. The year's almost over, and this month we've got a great presentation from Hunter going over the new features in 8.1. Hunter has been a volunteer and a major contributor to the user group and the technical people here in Austin. So I don't know exactly when Laravel Austin started, but I think he'll tell you some more about that, as well as his experience as an organizer of Longhorn PHP. Yeah, super happy to have him speaking this month. So thank you, Hunter, and feel free to take it away. I think we're set for you now.
Sure thing. I'm gonna take over the screen sharing. Just to at least throw up the title slide, and then excuse me, we'll get things going. Can everybody see what's new in PHP 8.1? Make sure the tech's working. So my name is Hunter Skracek. I am one of the co-organizers of the Longhorn PHP conference that went off very well this year. Super excited to hear that, and we're looking forward to hopefully doing it again soon next year. I'm also the organizer of the Laravel Austin Meetup group. I honestly don't know the answer to your question, Logan, of how long it's been around, since I wasn't the original organizer. I took over it, I want to say 5+ years ago. It feels like it's been a long time. Unfortunately, the virtual approach didn't really work out for our group as COVID kicked in. So the group's been kind of in a dormant or hibernating status. But now that the location that we have our hoster meetup at is available for in-person events again, we're hoping to start up events in person 2022. So be looking out on meetup.com and the Twitter account for some announcements around that. It's been a while since I've actually been running a meetup group and all that fun jazz. So we're going to see if I can remember how to do that. And I'm sure it's going to be great. But enough about me, enough about Laravel Austin. Let's get started and let's talk about PHP 8.1. So it's live. I want to give a huge shout out and thanks to the release managers, Joe Watkins, Ben Ramsey, and Patrick Allert. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, Patrick. A lot of work was put into the release and an awesome feature set we're going to go over tonight. So once again, thank you to the managers. For anyone who's much like myself and my company's ideology and not a fan of .0 releases, you'll be happy to know that 8.1.1 release candidate 1 dropped at the beginning of the month. So we should be seeing an 8.1.1 soon. And then those of us that like to hold off for at least a release will be able to start diving in and playing with these new features ourselves. So to kind of give you all an overview of what we're going to cover tonight, we're going to go over, where can you get PHP 8.1 today? We're going to go over what's new, obviously. And, after we go over what's new, we got to talk about some of the things that were deprecated to be removed in the future and things that have been removed with the release of 8.1. And then finally, going to give you all or show you all a few resources where you can find out more information. Links on these slides will function and drive you everywhere you need to go, and I'll make sure these slides are shared at the end. So, diving right into it, how do you get PHP 8.1? Well, if you're a Mac OS user, there's a strong chance you're using Homebrew. If you are, you can simply run brew install php at 8.1 to specify the version, and that will just take care of the installations and links and unlinking old versions if you have any, and boom, running PHP 8. There's some instructions that I've linked here for Ubuntu and Debian, but those boil down to if you're used to managing and upgrading Ubuntu or Debian-based servers, it's use Andre's repo. Well, huge shout out to Andres for maintaining that thing. Don't know what we do without him outside of have to, build it ourselves. For Red Hat-based images, you can use Remy's repo. Huge thanks to Remy as well. If you're a Docker user, they've already got tags live for 8.1.0, and I didn't check beforehand, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have some tagged Docker images for the 8.1.1 release candidates. If you're a Windows user, I've linked here where you can get a hold of those downloads. Not as familiar with that part myself. And then finally, if you want to go, I don't know, would you consider building it from source old school? I don't really know. But if you want to, build it yourself, then you can obviously get to the source code via php.net and go that approach. So let's start diving into some of the new features. That's right, PHP finally got enums. Some people might say we're finally, becoming more like Java, but it is nice to finally no longer need these weird, like a constant class just floating around for these types of values, or immediately a very useful package, Spatty. Never can really decide. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but their enum package is very useful. I actually use it today at work. And whenever we get to PHP 8.1, sadly, we'll replace it, but we'll be able to use the enums natively in language. They are singleton-based objects, so you will be able to do status active, triple equals to status active without having any issues like that. Otherwise, they're kind of similar to, your match or your switch statements, having cases for the different values of the enums. You can add public functions to, you can add any accessible layer, but obviously public functions to the enum. You can also add static methods to enums, though typically if you're adding a static method, it's probably to add a different constructor variant to the enum. Don't have to do anything with constants anymore. Thank you, PHP 8.1. You can have these be backed by strings or integer values. So instead of active being just the string active, you could have active 1, expired 2, etc. Depends on whatever these enum values need to, actually represent in code. If you serialize an enum, they will convert to the values. In the case of your regular enums, they will convert to the strings active, expired, canceled, or pending. If we were to look at this backed example and say active was 1, if you JSON serialized it, you would get the actual value. In the code itself, you can access the value backing the enum with the value property. You can also, using the backing values, create an enum. And then finally, there are two froms there. If you do try from, if the string value in this example is not actually a valid enum case, then you'll just get a null. Otherwise, you'll get a throw or a throwable thrown from the creation of the enum. And depending on your programming style, one might be preferable over the other. You can use interfaces on enums. So in this example, say the different statuses have, a color that's shown in the UI, attributed to the different statuses. You can do enum status implements has color, and then implement the functions that the interface declares. And you can also use traits. I can't spell the word properties, but You can include traits on these, but yeah, enums cannot have properties themselves outside of the one that the value property that's defined by the language itself. No custom properties. Speaking of properties, though, perfect segue into read-only properties. So a lot of us are probably familiar with the pattern of taking input data and kind of converting that to value objects, or instead of passing around just regular scalar types, using value objects. But typically, whenever you're creating these value objects, you're intending for them to be, immutable, especially if it's coming from user input that needs to be, passed around from method to method. Before, you would have to, if you wanted a read-only variant, then you would have to specify everything as a private property and then add getter methods, obviously leaving off setter methods, and, perfectly functional working PHP, but obviously not the best when it comes to the developer experience front. But now with the read-only properties, you can use the, I went to go say the word and then I forgot, but you can basically use the property definitions inside the constructor, adding read-only. So initializing the property will work, except the value. But if you try to modify that value afterwards, an exception is going to get thrown, or an error, I should say. First class callable syntax. So first of all, I want to point out that the triple dots here is not a omission or a typo, but is actually part of the syntax in these examples. But you can now store the callable, instead of having to basically, do closure from callable or use the array of this method name, you can actually create callables through the syntax here. So if foo is the method you want to call, you can do this foo triple dots, and you'll be able to store. Very similar to, especially with, this is helpful with built-in PHP methods as well. Now you can write code a little bit more concisely and cleanly instead of needing to litter your code with closure from callable and random function strings all over the place. New initializers. Something to keep in mind is that for the attribute syntax, this does allow for nested attributes now, but I didn't include an example of what that would look like in the slides. But in old style, creating this class service, you could specify that the logger is null, initially starts with null, and then if no logger is provided, you could use the no coalescence assignment operator to create the new logger within the actual constructor itself. Now you can actually specify it inside of the initializers, so you can skip that bit of, templating, defaulting code, and now just create the new object within that part of the syntax. Looks a lot nicer and cleaner, and like I said, if you're a user of PHP attributes, then you can use this now to do nested attributes. Intersection types. So we already have union types in the language. Now we've got intersection types. This allows you to do things. So for example, in this function process, we can actually specify that we need objects that have the intersection of has ID and has name interfaces. And the result from processing this will be objects that are of both the type result and array access. This will help a lot with IDEs, obviously, static analysis as well, to make sure so that your IDE knows and can help you developers, write the code, know that it has functionality from array access as well as, result. And static analysis can help to make sure you're not introducing bugs with these or potentially passing around, items that don't match the specified types in the intersection. And before, you could use interfaces and then implement, the extended interface or the parent interface. But basically, you can now accomplish this without having to touch implementation classes at all. Never type. This one definitely helps with static analysis, especially around detecting dead code. This type is also going to apply to, to functions that die or trigger errors. But basically, if you've got functions like this where you're calling the function and it's just immediately throwing, anything that implements throwable, you can now actually type into this method with never to indicate that it's not a void return. It's just that this function will literally never return a result because it will immediately throw an exception, interrupt a code execution, all that fun jazz. Final class constants. So if you have a base class, say you specify the constant's name, and then you have status active for just map, no magic strings or numbers in your code. You've got a constant actually relating to an active status. Before, there was nothing that really stopped outside of, actually no, there was really nothing that really stopped you from being able to, in a class that extended this base class, from overriding the constant, or overriding the constant with a new definition for what that constant means, because now you can use the final keyword to make that possible. So now status active can be set publicly so that extended classes have access to it. Set to active, nothing can change it ever again, can't be overloaded by anything that extends it. If you attempt to, then the code's going to fail and throw, I think it's a type error or something around the error family. But as before, anything that doesn't have final still allows you to override what that constant means. We've got explicit octal integer notation. So I personally don't have a lot of experience using octal integer notation, but it's there. You can explicitly notate it. I believe the syntax from prior was having a bit of a brain fart, being able to specify with 0, but preceding the numbers. Now you can do the 0 octal 16 or 0x16 and accomplish the same results. So just allows you to kind of write your code in a more cleaner, more sensical syntax. Fibers. This is probably one of the bigger items that comes from PHP 8.1, at least, in my opinion. These fiber objects are honestly kind of hard for me to describe at times. But basically, if you're familiar with any of the libraries like Guzzle, for example, with asynchronous or being able to write asynchronous code in a synchronous language, you've probably interacted with Guzzle's promises concept before when you're sending requests. And basically, those promises exist as placeholders to what the value is going to be eventually when the code finishes completion. Fibers come in, they're still used within event loops provided to you by these, different libraries, either from Guzzle, React PHP, or AMP PHP, I should say. But now with fibers, you don't have to mess with promises. Like you can actually type into your asynchronous functions are going to be returning, a PDO result object and not a promise that you can't do any actual language or you can't document the language return types because PHP doesn't have generics at the moment to say, oh, it's going to be a promise that actually is a type of PDO results. That was never a thing unless you used doc block annotations and your IDE had to do interpretations for you. Now with Fiber, you don't have to worry about it. Fibers will take care of it for you. They can be paused, suspended. They're not like generators that are stackless. So the fibers themselves have their own stack calls. I definitely recommend reading more in just fibers. I couldn't do it justice tonight. It's one of those things where we could do a whole presentation on fibers itself. Not signing up for that one, Logan. But yeah, like I said, remember, you will still need these in some form of an event loop, so React or AMPHP. I have more experience with AMPHP, and if you follow them on Twitter, actually, they've started kind of tweeting and showing off examples of what your asynchronous PHP code can look like. using fibers in PHP 8.1. What happened? Okay, there we go. String key array unpacking. This is one of those weird things where I didn't know this wasn't a feature already in the language until I went to go do it one day, and then it blew up in my face, and I went, well, wait, what's happened? Oh, it's not supported, but it's about to be, but in PHP 8.1. At the time, this application was PHP 7.4, so 8.1, bit of a pipe dream, but now that it's been upgraded to PHP 8, I could go back and rewrite that bit of code with just one more, little minor version bump for my application's runtime. But now you are able to do array unpacking with arrays that have string keys. Before, you could only do it with integer keyed arrays. Now, string keys fit in. You can kind of mix and match as well. Just works. Makes it even easier and is more consistent. And, it follows the array merge semantics. There are some performance improvements. In this case, the JIT, or just-in-time compiler, is now available for ARM64. So think the new Macs with Apple Silicon or AWS's Graviton 2 instance types. We've got some things like inheritance caching. We've got first-class name resolution, some various improvements through functions and abilities throughout the language, such as serialization and deserialization, various functions like explode, string natural comparison, dex hex, SPL file system iterators, and the time library and extinction date. For demo Symfony applications, you see about a 23% speed up increase. And for WordPress, you get a 3.5% speed increase with these changes. And there's a few more things as well. There's a new method that was introduced called array as list. To kind of give a little bit of background on that, since PHP arrays are kind of unique in their existence, there wasn't until now a way to actually check if an array was, a list, an integer keyed 0 through length of array -1 style array, because the key could be an integer, out of order, or a string. This function now allows you in your application, library code, etc., to check if the array in question is actually a sequential list. There's fsync and fdatasync. My understanding of this is basically PHP was one of the few languages that didn't really have this concept before, or map to C's level of fsync. PHP 8.1 fixes that, but basically fsync or fdatasync will actually cause the data in the buffer to be written all the way to the actual physical storage on the system, and not to the level above it that I'm blanking on the name, unfortunately. So if you're got very file heavy applications, this will probably mean a little bit more to you, especially if you need to make sure that data is being synced actually onto the physical media consistently and reliably. Now let's drop into some deprecations and your backwards compatibility breakage time. Everyone's fun topic and fun parts of dealing with upgrades. So there have been a few type breaks. Internal functions in PHP now have return types. So if you're extending things like internal classes, for example, PDO, you'll need to add these return types to your class. Your extending classes, you can get around it by now by using the return type will change attribute. Excuse me. Passing null to non-nullable internal functions is now deprecated. You will get a deprecation warning for that. The old style serializable interface has been deprecated. As of PHP 7.4, they added the new magic functions, serialize and unserialize. That solves the issues from the old style interface. So that interface is now deprecated, will be removed in a future PHP version. So if you're relying on it, now would be a good time to switch to the PHP 7.4 features that were introduced. And then casting floats to integers whose values aren't actually equal. There are loads of headaches when it comes to casting floats to integers, especially because floats can go over the integer maximum in PHP for your system, and also those fractional pieces. So this just deprecates some, kind of inconsistent type logic. Some more type breaks. There are resources that have now actually been converted to objects. So file_info will give you an finfo object. IMAP resources, now mapped to an IMAP connection object. Same for FTP. Font identifiers in GD are now GD font objects. LDAP resources, you've got your connection result and resulting tree. Same with Postgres, and pspell now has dictionary and config objects instead of resource objects. There are some other database changes. The MySQLi extension now throws exceptions by default. Integers from PDO actually will return as ints instead of stringy numbers. And here's a nice link that I'll go ahead and take a look at and open real quick for going from 7.2 to 8.1 compatible in aurora.sql. A nice example from Ian. Let's get to the fun parts. So you can actually see, like I mentioned, that if you're extending some of the objects like PDO, that you'll have to add return types. Or in this case, you can see Ian's using the return type will change attribute to get around that. But this is basically as much fun as it is to scroll through PR. Everything that's involved with upgrading looks like a relatively straightforward and small PR. It is using aurora.sql library, but if using anything very similar, it should be just as easy. There's some other functionality changes. Single quote will get encoded as blob of text there on the screen in escaping functions. The $ globals is now less flexible. You can find out a lot more detail by visiting the link there, but basically you just can't write to it anymore, and reading from it as a whole is read only. And you can, read from and write to array values instead of globals, but anything outside of that won't work or is read only now. If you want to take a look at some further reading, there's php.watch that has information on all the different PHP versions, more specifically 8.1. If you're not familiar with the Stixure.io blog, I honestly love this blog. It's great for keeping up to date with what's coming in languages, especially when I'm, not on Twitter as much these days, so it's hard to keep track of all the RFCs getting accepted and not accepted, et cetera, et cetera. Stixure always comes in handy. And obviously, PHP.net releases 8.1. A lot of the information for these slides came from or born from everything that was listed for the PHP 8.1 release, as well as some of the, extra fun stuff from RFCs, like the just-in-time improvements. But that's really all I've got on all the new, cool, fun, exciting 8.1 things. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Awesome. Thanks, Hunter. Good job. Good job. I definitely have some questions, and I was kind of busy at the beginning. And so maybe I missed the first few couple of slides as I was posting the YouTube link everywhere. When it might be helpful for everyone, when was PHP 8.1 released? I don't know if
when was it? It was released
like last year, or no,
November 25th this year.
Okay, yeah, okay, all right, good. I was like, all right, it seems like it hasn't been that old, but yeah, that was pretty recent.
Yeah.
So do you know, is it available yet on Homebrew?
Yes, it is. It is. You
Okay,
can do brew install PHP and then use the at modifier to specify the version, and you can install PHP 8.1 today.
cool. And then have you had time to look up to see if it's like on available some of the local dev projects for Docker? Like Laravel has a Laravel specific local dev, and I think there's a few Lando, and then there's a few others maybe. I don't know if it's available yet there.
I have not gone to see it's available. Like so far from what I've seen, like I think it may have been Forge or for sure all the packages in the Laravel ecosystem, but Laravel's pretty much got 8.1 support fully covered across everything already. Fully supports it. Docker PHP official images exist for 8.1, ranging from your FPM, CLI, Slims, Alpines, etc. Uh, all that's
Cool.
good to go. I didn't get a chance to look before the meeting, but I wouldn't be surprised because I vaguely remember them existing before 8.1 released, but I'm fairly certain the 8.1.1 release candidate that came out 6 days ago is tagged on Docker. So definitely very readily available. I can't necessarily speak to certain projects like Laradoc and Sail, things like that. I would imagine Sail, if Laravel's got an 8.1 support across its ecosystem, is up to date or has a 8.1 version available
They're
for its
probably
runtime.
like if since it's like so recent, they're probably reviewing the pull request. You know, if it's if it's not already available. Um, and then so the JIT updates for the AWS Graviton and some of those other things. Do you know, or does anyone happen to know, like if there's any new PHP any entries or like anything that changed on any side of things?
I personally didn't look that deep into it, but since this, I don't believe anything new was added because the JIT changes were just basically introducing it to ARM64 architecture. It didn't exist before. So
Okay,
anything
yeah,
that was already there in x86, x64, Intel AMD environments is now
yeah,
available for ARM.
it, it just works by default. That's good. It's available. Um, cool. So and then this is maybe a little bit of a comment. And I need to check the YouTube chat here. But the global changes looks like it's probably going to break a lot of WordPress stuff. Because yeah,
Yeah, it will be probably one of the more fun ones. You can read more about the kind of what was restricted on the RFC, kind of pulled it up briefly. I'm not going to, waste everyone's time by scrolling through the RFC. I will make sure you get the link to the slides, Logan, so that.
cool. Yeah, we can update the meetups links. Um, yep. So I'm just replying to Ian here actually. Ian, I think there's a lot of like plugins and stuff that actually still use it. I haven't looked at the core code in a little bit, but yeah, it's globals is definitely a problem on WordPress.
Yeah.
So all right, let me look through the comments here. We don't have any comments in Zoom. So if you have any questions for Hunter, either ask your questions in Zoom or on YouTube, and then we'll get them answered. So some good comments from people on YouTube. I guess let us know. Would be fun is like, let us know on YouTube what your favorite feature that was added in 8.1. We have a few people that already mentioned that first class callable looks pretty awesome. The read only keyword, um, and yeah. Um,
I'm surprised no
all
one's made a comment about Ian owning the slides
right.
as I showed.
Yeah. Do you want to explain that? What happened with that? Like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So originally, Ian was going to. I'm trying to find the origin of the story. So basically, Ian was going to give this presentation and then realized that he was going to be at a conference at the same time. So he reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to step in and give the presentation in his stead. So I haven't gotten my first full back to doing meetup and presentations yet because I didn't, make the slides myself. But like I said, Laravel Austin's coming back in January, ready to
Well,
go. So I'll have my chance then. But yeah, I stepped in and helped out present Ian's slides basically. But
all good. I think you did a great job, and you always gave really good presentations at the Laravel meetup. So
thank you.
you know what to do. So
I am very good at talking and saying words.
yes, the words are coming out of my mouth. Cool. Any other questions for Hunter? Let's see here. And Ian also joined. He's in the YouTube chat, and he might be on Zoom. I'm not quite sure, but yeah. Ian says the typos were his fault, so don't blame Hunter. Awesome, and then we'll definitely have to find somebody to give that fibers talk. That looks super interesting. We did the application server changes. It looked really interesting. Getting the async stuff working a lot better it is going to be a great thing. I would love to have a talk on Roadrunner, or maybe like Roadrunner versus AM PHP and or Swool. Like all the kind of application kind of job runner stuff. If we could like have, I think that would be a really good talk, is like comparing, contrasting everything.
Yeah, not to sign myself up for, more work, but to do exactly that because I'm just really good at it. I don't know if it'll be January per se, but one of my first talks I want to bring to the Laravel Austin meetup is Laravel Octane, which both Roadrunner and Swool are optional, like two of the different runtimes that Octane can use. So that talk will probably be a bit more Laravel focused, but I'm sure I could extract the Roadrunner Swool stuff out of it and let you know. My
Awesome,
people
yeah,
talk to
and
your people kind of thing.
yep, and we can definitely do a similar sort of thing, like a webinar kind of thing. If you, I mean, where did you say it was going to be hosted at? I mean, I'm assuming their like bandwidth is going to be fine for streaming.
Yeah, it's through the Capital Factory. They've got their streaming.
Oh,
Well,
that's built. Yeah.
they had YouTube streaming themselves, like live stream for the rooms, and there wasn't, this has a lot more control and options to it as they all put together here. But that was pre-COVID, so I have no idea what's available in the spaces now and what technology, if they've changed hardware or anything like that. I don't even know if I'll still be in the same room we were in. So the first meetup might be figure out what tech is there and just try and get it working, and
Cool.
then we'll graduate to Shine to do the webinar type approach as well.
Well, I'll have to show up early, and then we can, if we need to like kind of set things up, or test things out, and figure it out, I think that'll be, we can do it kind of, pre the 30 minutes prior, kind of like as all the craziness is happening. Yeah.
Looks like we had a question come in through the Q&A on Zoom, but
yep.
Not necessarily directed towards me. So y'all might be better suited.
But let's just answer that live here. Does it? Wait, no.
You said you're going to answer it live.
I think I screwed it up. Okay, so it doesn't show that. So I actually have to say the question, since so Stuart asks, beyond the topic of PHP 8.1, what is the primary place where this PHP Meetup community discusses various topics? Is meetup.com the best place, or perhaps Discord? There are definitely a couple Discord servers, and I don't have the links handy for all of them, but there's a PHP community one. And then there's another one, the PHP user group on Slack. There's a Texas PHP Discord server, and there is a Texas PHP Slack as well, although that's kind of in limbo. So there's a bunch of places. What else? I know there's like some stuff on Stack Overflow. Does it? Any of the other organizers have some?
I'd say PHP UG for the one you mentioned, PHP user group. PHP UG is the Slack workspace that you'll find numerous PHP
what's
channels.
their domain name? Do you remember?
It's php.ug.
Okay.
Or Uganda, but I think Andreas hijacked it for user group. Yeah. As far as where we're discussing this, it's a little bit different since we're a conglomeration of several different meetup groups. I know here in Seattle we have a mailing list on our meetup group that you can shout your PHP questions discussions to too. But as far as all of us, I mean, at least the organizers, we're converging on that php.ug Slack.
Yep.
And the majority of the people in that workspace are, at least the majority of the active people, at least, are in Europe. So if you have any late night questions, they'll be fresh with their morning coffee.
There you go. I think those are some good suggestions there. Yeah, there's I think I tried to. Does anybody still check Reddit? Like, there's probably some other places that we're not thinking of here.
Yeah, I know the PHP Reddit is decently active. I personally don't check it. There's also, a lot of, or maybe a lot of us is the wrong descriptor, but a good chunk of us are on Twitter and active there as well. Various PHP discussions happen there. A lot of them are productive, maybe not all of them, but you could probably say the same about all the places, especially Reddit.
Yep.
Yeah, Twitter, I know, is for me personally where I get kind of stay in touch with the community.
That's a good suggestion.
Something else to mention too. I'm a little out of date on the full information, but PHP C used to be stands for PHP Community. That was kind of a larger scale community effort that used to be IRC based. And if you find, I know they're on Twitter at PHPC. If you go to phpcommunity.org, They've got some other links. There's like it was like a Discord forum, a Mastodon. That was one of those Twitter clone kind of things. Chat is, you click there. They mentioned Discord, Matrix, some other things. I know they used to have a like a web client for IRC and something else. So some of this may be a little old or out of date, but there may be some other resources there. I know that was you know, community effort, kind of a little bit more kind of back in the day. Not that it's, you know, years and years out of date, but yeah, it may be at this point. I haven't kept up with it myself, but that was I knew some of the organizers of that when it was a lot more commonly referred to. So that may be just another source.
Yeah, the phpcommunity.org is definitely that's a good suggestion. There, I joined their Discord, and it is active. So if you're a Discord user, I think that's a good resource. Any other questions? Acid Jazz says, "Great talk. Thank you." He plans on going to 8.1 on a couple of Vapor projects soon.
Nice. And I did confirm Laravel Sail does have the 8.1 runtime available, so you can get started very easily if you're a Laravel user.
A lot of us these days are. I was it seems like, I don't know, 5+ years ago there was like lots of different frameworks that you could pick from, but now it's like everybody's consolidated on Laravel or Symfony. Yeah, I mean, I think what like Yi framework is big still because Craft CMS.
It's been a while since I've worked on Yi.
Has anybody done anything in Codeigniter in the last 4 years?
Last 4 years. Never mind.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's kind of specific, but yeah. And then Cake, because I mean, like, haven't used Cake in probably 8 years.
Yeah, we have some legacy Cake stuff, and we're going to move it over to Slim.
Slim's still kicking. They're a good micro framework still. I mean, I think there's definitely more options on the micro framework side, right? Hi, Ben.
I just realized that I had been using the wrong mic this whole time, so y'all don't hear anything I've said this whole meetup.
So we can hear you now, though.
Did you just think we were really
funny.
talking over you?
Well, my internet's kind of going in and out. So
I was like, now he froze up and just
know,
lost video.
whatever.
Nothing's working in Ben's favor.
Just not your night, huh?
What were some Ben highlights?
The last one was talking about Codeigniter. I have used Codeigniter, but I don't think I've shipped anything with Codeigniter.
I was gonna say, I this is more anecdotal than anything else, but it seems like I remember hearing that, like within the last couple of years, Cake had a big update and kind of a bit of a renewal, and Codeigniter, somebody like it had changed ownership a few times, you know, back as far as even like, you know, I don't know, between 5 or 10 years ago, and somebody else had picked it up again or something, but that may be a few years old information as well. But sometimes these things kind of get, you know, rejuvenated a little bit, and kind of, you know, kicking the butt to get them moving again or something. I don't know.
Does Codeigniter have Composer? I can't remember. I don't know. Last time I looked, I'm not sure they had kind of like native Composer support.
It does now. So there's Codeigniter version 4, which is like full rewrite, namespace, Composer, all that.
Coming back.
It's definitely, it was a great framework to learn like MVC on, I think. So there's still some use cases, probably.
Probably. The only other highlight was when you pulled up the Meetup page, it had a picture of Hunter where he looked like 14 years old. And so I had a nice clip about baby Hunter appearing.
Now I want to go.
Yeah, what page was that on? Was that a thing that I did?
I think
maybe
it was
it's your-
the Austin PHP Meetup page.
Oh yeah, it's your photo. Your
Oh,
on
yeah.
Meetup.com is from like high school. It looks probably maybe college.
College.
Yeah, college. Okay.
Nice.
Basically, baby Hunter.
Yeah, and like my photo is super old too. It's like I think that was when I was doing the awesome tech videos, like going to a different meetup every night of the week kind of thing. So yeah.
I learned that facial hair is a great thing to insinuate your face, and coincidentally makes you look a little bit older too. In my time. And now that Ben said something about it, I'm updating that photo as we speak.
Nice.
Still have 2 JetBrains licenses available, so if anybody's still listening and interested, Chris at atlantaphp.org. I will send you the license details.
Awesome.
Everyone loves free licenses.
And it's good for other stuff besides PHP Storm, right? Like
Yep.
data
Anything
grid and
anything in there, sweet. If you think, hey, I should start learning some Python, go get PyCharm and install that. Or they've got DataGrip as a pretty robust database client. Those are just 2 off the top of my head that I've looked at a couple times. I'm using DataGrip more regularly and looked into the PyCharm, but any of their tools is up for grabs. So
WebStorm is great if you're doing a lot of JavaScript.
Yep.
All sorts of good tools there. Did you guys see that JetBrains added like remote dev stuff, like where it's kind of like the GitHub,
Codespaces.
code spaces, but it's like native in the IDE. I haven't used it yet, but maybe somebody here has. That would be a fun talk.
Yeah, I saw them. I saw it briefly because I started doing some research around Longhorn PHP time frame. Another shameless plug. Because I was doing a lot of work at work because we were about to onboard some new hires, and after some rocky initial new hires doing a whole new remote thing, I was like, all right, we're gonna make this better, gonna do it right. Was reading about GitHub code spaces. We're not a GitHub user, so unfortunately not something available to us, but somehow wound up on JetBrains site, and they were first introducing the feature. It looks cool. It looks like it's right now just like you set up a server and it somewhere, and then you just connect via SSH to that server. They also introduced their new what was it called?
It's like the
lightweight
like
IDE thing.
the Sublime replacement kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's, I think, and also like it looked interesting because you can like basically pick like if you want like full contextual IDE or just kind of like super lightweight, and you can like swap between the 2 if you want, maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I don't remember what it's called. That did look awesome. I haven't tried it yet. starts with an F.
Is it Fleet?
Fleet. Yeah, that's right.
JetBrains Gateway is the remote development product. For those that are curious.
Yep. That would be a good talk. Then kind of like getting a remote dev environment set up or something like that, and getting it working with PHP Storm.
Oh yeah.
What are some other good talk ideas?
One license left. We got another person.
Yay.
Woohoo.
Chris, there's a question for you in the Q&A.
Chris at atlantaphp.org. Let me see if I can pull up close my presentation again. 1 second. Oh, hold on, the wrong thing. 1 second. I'll share this again real quick.
One JetBrains side project that we've been using at work lately has been the remote, remote pairing tool that they have.
Oh, yeah.
Code with me.
That's awesome.
Yes, yeah, Code with
How
me.
do you-
Yeah, and that's been.
How do you like it?
We use that as well as screen sharing at the exact same time. So we'll do a screen sharing to show like what the web page looks like, but when wanting to do pairing with the actual code itself, we'll use the Code with me, and it's been really handy for us.
Awesome.
And being able to take over the code and say, okay, so this is what I'm thinking of, or oh, this is what I'm thinking of too, and so it's been really handy.
Yeah, now that everybody's like used to working distributed, thankfully. Can we just never go back to the office, please? Yes, please. Yeah, I mean, it's nice when it's just built into the tool that you're used to using, right? Like, you don't have to launch some other thing, or you don't have to use a browser, because you probably have a bunch of things open in your browser. So, yep.
Hey, Will, if you see the screen share, Chris, this is my address, got highlighted here. If you haven't already mailed me already, I haven't seen the.
You can see your email, by the way.
Yep, got it, Will.
Okay.
Thanks. We'll get back to you shortly.
All right. Also, all the licenses are taken. Do you get 2 a month, Chris? Like, so we'll get 2 more next month.
It's one a month, but I've had
Oh,
a couple months running where nobody responded, so they eventually expire. And JetBrains, if you don't use them up fast enough, they're like, hey, we need to use the, encourage your people to use these or give them away. We'll remove you from the program if you don't use them up. So they get a little pushy about getting people registered. So I'm trying to,
yeah.
I'll give away as many as I can to catch it up. But it's 1 a month typically. So we'll get another one, I think, and it's offset. We're like, I'll get that next one like next week or something for January. So
I think
timing's
if we like tell them like, hey, can we have 2 a month or something? Like, if we end up needing more, that they might do that. I mean, when I was talking with those people, like, it seemed like they're pretty responsive to requests, but the 1 a month seems to be working fine for now. So
yeah, it's because a lot of times I just don't get any response. So as much as I promote it, or and then I'll post it, again back to my own group, or gave one to work somebody at work once, stuff like that, and I still end up with 2 or 3 at a time left over. So, but if we got with new groups coming on, maybe we'll get some more attract more people interested in it. So we'll see.
Cool. All right. Time to check YouTube again.
Thanks everybody who responded. I will get that email over right away.
All right. So I think we'll probably just wrap it up here. Thanks again, Hunter, for speaking. Really appreciate it. Thanks
for
everyone for joining us. Welcome Eric and Tim and Gordon. The other happy to have the additional user groups joining us. So exciting to see Merge PHP continue to grow.
Continue to merge.
Yes, merge all the things.
This was a good pull request.
Thanks again, Hunter and Ian, for slides. Welcome to the new guys. I was trying to, like Ben, I was trying to say something earlier. I was unmuted, but my mic was disconnected. The plug dropped off the end of it, so I was talking at one point and going nowhere. So good to see Eric. I've met, I know, and good to meet Tim and Gordon, new guys. So thanks everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Right.
All right. Well, I hope you all have a good rest of your holidays, and we'll see you all in January 2022.
Woo! Happy New Year.
Cheers.
Y'all too. Thanks.
Bye.